everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kate and today I am going to be teaching you how to paint a magical moonlit watercolor painting. So what we're first going to do is grab your pencil and we're just going to sketch in where our moon is going to be so we can make sure we preserve that white of the page. So I am going to make my moon, so if you divide your section of paper you're working with about in half, and then go in the middle of that. So in the top section, in the middle, we're gonna place our moon. And you don't have to make your circle look absolutely perfect, because if we do this the right way, we will be able to erase those pencil lines. So we are gonna start with that, and then on this horizon line, we are just gonna kind of squiggle in some lines to kind of represent where our little forest town is going to be underneath our moon. Down below, you're also going to want to kind of preserve a section of white where your moon is going to like reflect. So again, if we do it right, either these lines will get covered by darker paint, or we're going to preserve enough white that we are just going to be able to go straight in and erase this. And then from here, we are going to make a little bit of a swoop motion, and then it's going to just go straight. So it's almost like a little slide. We are going to draw a fence line, and this fence line is going to slowly go off into the distance, and it's going to come above that break in our land, and just curve the top, basically a rounded rectangle. And then just create another swooping motion. This is like a rope fence. And then over here, you're going to do another rounded rectangle, but a little bit smaller and not the same height either. And then we're going to do that one more time and make it even smaller. And then this one is going to have rope coming off into nowhere, like we can't see the next fence post. And then we are going to block in a little bit of a line here where we're going to have a tree framing our picture, and just kind of loosely sketch in that tree trunk, and then we can add the branches kind of freely with our brush strokes later. And then over here, we're going to have a couple pine trees also framing our moon, our landscape. And we're going to just quickly sketch in those rough shapes. It doesn't have to be anything amazing, because again, we're going to try to make this come alive more with our paint rather than our pencil. Okay, so there we have our rough sketch. And now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our paintbrushes. I'm going to be using this travel set and the largest one in it. And it's like a little capsule, and it's really fun, and these work really well. So the best way for this is we're going to be using the wet on wet technique. You're going to make sure your brush is clean and then load it up with water. And then you're going to just go straight in and get this whole entire page wet. The best way to work with watercolors is to work all at once, so try not to section things off, but kind of work when everything is wet. There's always a time to go in with wet on dry, but it really helps going wet on wet for that first layer to make everything feel like it works together. So I have my tiny little travel set here that I'm working with. Oops. And I'm going to be grabbing my indigo blue, get that on my brush, and I'm immediately going to go around my moon so I know that that area, it's wet, it's worked with, and we're going to let that blend on its own. Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to start blending out the rest of this night sky. Just going to blend that a bit, little radius of the circle. There we go, that looks perfect. And then you're just gonna come down lightly into the rest of this area. When we get to our water down here with that area we marked out, do the same thing you just did with that moon. Don't touch it, just work around it. And with that wet on wet, it's all going to blend together. And if you can see, I have my paper at an angle. A little bit of that is coming into my moon circle. I'm gonna take my tissue and I just dab away at that center circle, and it picks that light blue paint right up. Now we want our evening sky to be darker. So I'm gonna go back and grab more of that indigo blue. I'm going right in at the top, and this is really thick paint. And I'm just gonna start pushing that in. And now that it's thicker and this paint, this water on my page is starting to dry, since the paint is thicker, it's not going to make any blooms, which in this painting, we don't want any blooms. Now, while this is wet, we are going to, first, real quick, I'm gonna add that darker blue down into my water as well, before I switch my colors. And then I'm going to rinse off my brush, make it nice and clean. And I'm gonna go grab some of my purple. Oops, I grabbed more blue. I'm gonna grab my purple. This should be my purple, yep. I'm gonna grab some purple and I'm gonna throw that on my palette, mix it in just slightly with that blue, but I want it to be nice and thick, not too watery, again, so we don't create blooms. And just tap off extra on your tissue, and that will help a lot to, again, keep away those blooms that we don't want. And I'm gonna add this purple to the base of our sky. This is gonna give it that little bit of a magical feel, adding this secondary color into this landscape. Pulling it away from the moon. And not a lot of water is gonna, again, it's gonna keep away any of those blooms from our smooth sky. And then right now, I think right here, I'm getting a little spot that's drying a little too quick. So with barely any water on my brush, I'm gonna blend this so it doesn't look so sharp. There we go. Okay, and then I'm gonna take that same purple and I'm gonna do the exact same thing down here in my lake. Gonna go just a little bit closer to that white section, make it look a little more broken up. There we go. Grab a little bit of my darker blue as well. Just kind of tap that in. Again, pulling it away from the white space. With the wet on wet, you don't want to overwork your paper. It'll buckle, it'll tear, it'll get a muddy finish. So you want to be careful not to overwork, which is so incredibly easy to do with watercolor. It is very easy to be like, oh, I'll just touch that up, and then everything is ruined. So I'm gonna just fix that little spot that I touched. I keep doing the same exact thing. Brush it away, dab, dab, dab. And then come back just a little, and then I have to stop touching it. Stop touching it. Okay, I'm gonna stop touching it. All right, so we have that right there. And then down here, it's gotten very dry, so I'm going to add a little bit of water below this so I can work on this as well. And I'm gonna get yellow ochre, which is just a great staple to have in your palette. And this is gonna be kind of like a wheat behind our fence post. And this is pretty light. It's gonna be lighter than our fence post, so feel free to just cover up that with this and you can layer on top. We're just giving in this base color so it blends naturally with our background and it feels like one painting. We're not working two separate. I'm gonna fill in this bottom again just so it all feels like it's cohesive, it's one. All of our colors are gonna be working together and not make this painting feel super separated from each other. Now what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna grab my green, and I only have a very blue-green in my palette right now. So I'm going to take that, I believe it's the Viridian Hue, and I'm gonna grab just a little bit of my Alzarian Crimson, a little bit more of my green, and then a touch of my yellow ochre to make a deeper, more grassy green. And I'm gonna take the very tip of my brush and add some more of those brush strokes inside like that. Like I said, the wheat area or grain or wild grass, I guess, area of our painting. And then I'm gonna come below and I'm going to just paint over all of that yellow. Add a little bit more of those lines. Just blend it out a bit. Let these two colors work together. And right now this is very light, but we'll make it darker and have it more stand out in a little bit. Let this section dry, and then we'll come back and work on our second layer. So now that everything has dried, I have pre-wet this white little section right here, and I'm gonna go and I am going to grab my small round brush. Grab the smallest one that you have that has a nice point. If you don't have a super small one, as long as a large brush has a nice point to it, you will be able to do this just fine. And I'm gonna go into my orange. This is my cadmium orange. And I just have it right on the tip of my brush. And I'm gonna add little dots to blend into this white background. This is again preserving some light areas when I know that I'm going to be keeping this area pretty dark. So just tapping that. That one was pretty dark, so I'm gonna just tap over with a kind of emptying my brush, then tapping back over with it. So I don't want them too vibrant. This is off in the distance, but I still want it to be where we can see them. I'm gonna just do a little, try to tap some off my brush, and that is not, I did not like that. Okay, and I'm just gonna help these out just a little, add a little bit of clean water to them to help them just expand a little bit more. And these are our lights off in the distance. We're gonna have little houses, and it's gonna give the impression of houses and trees. And then we're gonna do the same thing down here, where we're just gonna match into the water. Again, just this is gonna copy the light as reflections. And if those little dots aren't really moving, just get some clean water on your brush and tap it over. Help them out a bit to blend. And we're also gonna go in. We're also gonna go in with a white pen at the end to really kind of give any vibrancy that we've lost. All right, so now we're gonna work here in our foreground. So up here is wet, so we're not gonna work on our tree yet or these trees. We're just gonna focus on our grass and on our fence. So in my palette here, I don't have a natural brown. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this yellow ochre, and I already have that blue on my palette from up here. I'm gonna take that yellow, I'm gonna go straight into that. And that makes a really muddy green, and that's not what we want, so we're gonna add a little bit more to it. I'm gonna grab some of that purple, That's getting closer. So now I'm going to add just a touch of that orange. And you can see I use my orange for mud a lot because it's pretty dirty in there. I'm going to get a little bit more of that orange, a little bit more purple, little yellow, and I just kind of mess with it until I get the result that I'm looking for. And the more you practice with color mixing, the easier this is going to become. Now that's the color I'm looking for, a nice muddy brown gray. And I'm going to start just adding in my fence post. So with wet on dry, just gonna kind of messily add in this fence post shape. I do the same thing over here. I'm gonna rinse my brush off just a little. I still have paint on it, but it's not as much, and I'm gonna add some color right there. Give it a little bit more dimension. Come back in here, blend that out. Just a wet brush, blending it just a little bit. Like that. And then back here, I'm going to use that watered down color, a little bit more than that, and put that in back here. There we go, just like that. I am going to dab this just a touch, lighten it up a bit because I want to add darker details later, so I don't want that to be too dark. I'm going to take that color again, I'm going to water it down a little bit more so it's more transparent. I'm going to dab it, the excess off on my tissue, and then I'm going to follow those lines I did earlier. In perspective, it's going to start larger and get smaller as we go backwards toward the back. Same here, pretty transparent but thicker because it is coming closer to us. All right, the sky is now dry and we're going to take that same brown paint. You can add a little bit more if you need to. Just grab those same colors you worked with earlier. If you need to freshen it up, just doing that. I got a really nice rich brown. I think I might make it a little bit richer like that. I like that a lot. A little bit of blue to deepen it up. And then you're gonna go in, and for me, I can still see my pencil lines for where I added my tree. The nice thing about things like trees and just stuff in nature, it is never perfect, and you can just freely make some wonky little shapes to make a realistic tree. Here, I'm gonna be thin as I bring my tree back to the trunk. I want some branches kind of coming out. I don't want to touch my moon, but I want to be pretty close to where it's like really being like, hey, look over here and look at this. Just kind of start pointing at it. You can always, a little breaks in it, have your tree branches cross. Things like that to just make it very as realistic as you want. I've realized with trees, going thinner is always better. You can always make something thicker. And so just add tree trunks until you feel like you've really filled it out and are happy with it. Here, I feel like this is a little too thick. I'm going to kind of even that out a bit. Since we added a little bit more of that orange to our brown, I'm going to take advantage of this tone and I'm going to add a little bit more to our fence post, avoiding my right side of it to just try to give it some depth and make it not, again, seem perfect, because this is just some wood out. You don't want it to seem perfect. All right, so I like that. We're gonna leave that as is, and I'm gonna leave those little ropes for now. And then with this deep brown, I'm just gonna leave this on my palette. We're gonna leave it there and work with that a little bit more later. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna grab my yellow ochre. I'm just gonna let it come down here and mix in with these colors, make it a little bit muddier because it's a night sky anyway. And with my tip of my brush, I'm just gonna add some loose lines in to fill out our foreground to give that appearance of like bushy wheat that is behind this fence. And I'm gonna speed this up because it can take a while to just add these lines. You're gonna see as I go, I'm gonna add some darker colors as well, and that's gonna be like a dark green with a little bit of blue and purple added in to just give some depth to it. But I'm gonna do it all now so it all blends. All right, so there we have our little wheat field, and now we're gonna work on the very front of our painting, and we're gonna give this some deeper grass texture by using a dry brush technique. We're gonna load up this bottom area with a darker grassy green. I'm using the Viridian hue, and I'm gonna mix in yellow ochre and maybe a touch of this orange, trying to use the same colors over and over again so that this painting feels like it's working together, it's not discombobulated with a bunch of random colors. So what I do is I mix my paint, I take my tissue, I dab out a lot of the excess, but not all of it, and I'm going to, just for my own use, I'm going to angle it and drag this dryish brush across to give this a dry brush technique to create the look of grass. This gets a lot easier the more you do it. And then I'm going to add just a little bit more yellow ochre, a little bit more green, mix up some just different colors. And you know what? I'm going to add a touch of purple. I'm going to get a light wash of purple, dab, and add that color to this as well. All right. And then because we dry brush that, we can just still work right on top of it. I'm gonna grab that blue that we used for our night sky, the indigo blue. I'm gonna get a watered down version of it. Again, I'm tapping off the excess, but this is not to where it's dry, it's just not gonna be seeping everywhere. And I'm gonna make some shadows for our fence post. I'm just gonna follow it right here, just like that. And then over here, I'm also gonna do the same thing. And then that one over there, I'm just gonna leave. So that gives us our little fence post. And underneath these, what are they called? Ropes. Just kind of break up some lines to suggest that these also have a cast shadow. And if anything looks too vibrant, just dab it a little bit. So I'm gonna do that right there. I'm going to add just a little bit more of that dry brush right by those shadows, just so they blend a little bit more. But that looks really good. Now our sky is completely dry. We're gonna add these trees. And again, we already have these colors mixed, so that's just perfect. We're gonna get a little bit more of that green again. So I just did the green with some of that cadmium orange to create a nice deep green. And you can just create in a blobbish shape for a pine tree. And you can leave little sections that can see through to the back. And then for me, I'm going to rinse my brush off real quick. You can also just have another one clean and ready to use to blend this down into the grass. So it looks like it's tucked behind this grass rather than in front of it. And then we're going to take that same color, add a tap of blue to it. And right next to it, we're going to create another tree, a little bit tinier, as if it were behind it. Leave tiny little sections of white right there. And by white, negative space. And then we're going to just blend that down. And I'm going to blend very smoothly right next to it, really not touching it too much. I just had a huge glop of water plop off my brush. I'm going to dab that away and then just go back in with that color. All right, and then we're going to do that again where we just add a tap of blue to what we have left. Right now it's mainly blue. I'm going to make it pretty light and thin so it's pretty transparent. And I'm going to add a really thin tree here and then one next to it. Just like that into the distance. And then again, I'm going to get a clean wet brush and blend that out. Just like that. And then before we get to our moon is going to be our last thing that we do. We are going to create our little town off into the distance. We're going to get that green and orange back, mostly orange, a little bit of that green. And back here, we're going to create some sharp points. And then we are going to work around that orange that we had plopped in earlier. And just whatever you do, try to make it as messy and uneven, like without a plan as possible. Because again, this forest back here isn't going to be a perfect pattern. It's going to be something messy and random. And then I'm creating a smooth horizon line at the bottom. Like this, going around those orange dots, like I said. And then I'm going to take some water on my brush, make sure it's nice and clean. Not too much water so it's not sopping and leaving puddles. And I'm going to blend in around those little dots. So everything seems smooth. And any sharp white is really going to take our eye away from that moon, and we don't want that. We want this area back here to be an accent. We don't want it to be stealing the show from the light of our moon. We want it to work together. Just kind of blend that in. Give a nice gradient back here. There we go. I really think that turned out good. Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna work on our moon. And like I said, I wanna try to erase, perfect. I wanna erase these lines. Everything is dry and that stayed pretty white. So it's easy to erase those lines and just get a nice white section. It makes this look like it has more of a glow already than before when it was like, oh, that's pencil right there. Now I am going to completely clean off my palette. You do not have to do this unless you have a super small one like me and you don't want to get brown into it. And what we're gonna do, we're going to make sure everything's clean. I'm gonna get my palette wet and just throw in a tap of that blue, which indigo is very strong. So like just then I like explode in my palette with that blue. And then I'm gonna clean my brush off and I'm going to add more water. And then my violet is also pretty potent. And I'm gonna add that right there. So I have these two colors I'm working with for my moon. I wanted to use these colors for it to have that magical feel rather than yellow, which is more of like a harvest moon, which I have a tutorial on that if you haven't seen it. It's one of my older ones. You can go, I'll link that at the end of this video if you want to go check that out. So I just filled up my circle area with water. Everything else around it is dry. And I see a little puddle. I'm gonna sop up that puddle. You don't want it so wet that it's like seeping and making a puddle. I'm gonna start with my purple. And in my reference, what I did was I made the bottom is going to be my more shadowed side. So I'm just plopping in some of this purple paint to give it like the craters of the moon, just like that. And then I'm gonna get just a hint more of that purple on my brush so it's not so watery. And I'm going to hint at the circle of the moon to give it some definition. And then I'm going to go back and blend that out a little bit. A little bit at the top, but not like a full circle. So it's not like we basically like, why do we even erase the pencil? Blending this out a little bit more with some clean water. And then we have the hint of the purple there, so I'm going to go in and get a light wash. So very watered down indigo blue. And I'm going to leave little blue crater splotches. Make some bigger than others. Get a little bit deeper. Leave a spot there. Go back into my purple. I'm gonna try to wipe away this little explosion that went outside my moon. Just tap that. All right, and then I'm gonna add another layer. I just tapped a lot, so I'm gonna add another layer of water on top of that, and I'm gonna go into one color we haven't used yet, and that is Payne's Gray. And I'm gonna do the same thing. Give it a couple taps for those crater marks. I dried my brush off, and then I'm going to just smooth out that section right there. To me, a moon is very, I could just be super finicky with it. All right, and there we have that. But before we call it completely done, I want to add some of our white gel pen to this. So wait for it to completely dry. Use a hairdryer if you want. a heat gun or just wait for it to dry with time. And then we will finish this with a white gel pen. All right, so here's our white gel pen. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna add tiny little, almost like a circular shape to it, but not like, again, full circles, kind of like dots creating circle shapes. Gonna give more white over here. Just adding white where I feel like it kind of got sucked up by the paint. And then I'm going to add little stars. Some stars into our sky. And there we have our magical moon landscape. Let me know in the comments if there's something you would like to see us work on next together. I will see you in the next painting. Bye.